just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. So we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. We have a special treat for you on this week's episode of Truth Seekers as we welcome Leslie Cunningham. Coach Nick's absence today paved the way for Coach Jon Zieve to fill in. And shortly before recording, we discovered that Coach Jon and Leslie shared the unlikely and unfortunate experience of having to have surgery to remove part of their tongues to prevent cancer from spreading. This shared experience seemed to provide an elevated energy during our conversation. It was a special experience we captured on this week's episode, which we are excited to share with you all. But first, more about Leslie. She may be called the Chief Networking Officer at the MANN Group, M-A-N-N, but perhaps Chief Inspiration Officer would be more fitting. Leslie is simultaneously the company's yin and yang. She has big ideas and can also rein them into reality. She is kindness personified, but knows when to talk tough. She's dyslexic and left-handed, a life that she dubs backwards. Yet it's Leslie that always drives the company forward. Leslie is also the host of The Other Side of the Man, a podcast breaking down the science of emotional intelligence into practical skills used throughout your daily living. Leslie is the mom of one, a yogi, a writer, a photographer, and loyal member of the Green Ridge Girls. We hope you enjoy a special edition this week of Truth Seekers as we introduce Leslie Cunningham. Here we are, another edition of Truth Seekers. We have Coach Jon Zieve filling in for Coach Nick today. Coach Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
And we have Leslie Cunningham as our guest today. Leslie and I have talked a couple times before our episode today, and the main topic, the main theme that we've discussed and that we'll be focusing on today is emotional intelligence, one of my favorite topics. I think it's so important to success and fulfillment in professional endeavors, but also our personal endeavors as well. But I would like to welcome Leslie and maybe have you define what that means. So we're coming from the same starting point as we start our conversation today.
Well, it's nice to see you, Josh, and nice to meet you, John. I've got Josh and John, both words that are not easy for someone like me to say right now, but we'll get into that in a moment. So emotional intelligence. Yes, I think, in fact, I said this the other day, emotional intelligence is the new self-care. I think that if we are choosing to be responsible human citizens in our lives, then we are making a choice to take responsibility for ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to be very self-aware and very self-regulated. And then that would translate into our social awareness. So being able to read a room, what's the temperature like, not in a method of manipulation, but just how's everybody doing and what's happening? And then how can I leave the room a little bit warmer, if you will, or a little bit more enlightened as it relates to emotional intelligence. So that's kind of how I defined it, but it was just like, man, there's a lot of self-care that goes along with emotional intelligence.
Gotcha. So yeah, I just want to maybe repeat that back so we're on the same page here. So emotional intelligence, just it starts with awareness. And if we use the words literally, being intelligent about our emotions, right? So just being conscious of the way that we feel about certain things. Mm-hmm. And that kind of has some implications about ourself with the self-care, but also in social settings, other people as well. We bring in a whole new element of other people's emotions in that definition. So I might ask Coach, does that definition ring true for you? And would you maybe tweak or add or edit any part of that?
Yeah, when I think of emotional intelligence, I think of, just being empathic. So being able to feel how others feel. Mm-hmm. And then the intelligence part is, what do you do with that information? So some of that feeling might be like negative. It might be overpowering. And what do you do with it? Because there's a lot of empaths that are, they're afraid to walk down the street because they feel everything, and they don't have a way of shutting out that emotions from others. So I think the intelligence is about learning this self-care that Leslie said. How do you deal with that? Because it's kind of a gift. And how do you leverage it as a strength?
Yeah.
And I might argue, even if we don't consider ourselves empaths, that we all have some sort of version of it. We're all in tuned with it at different wavelengths of it. So it's come back to awareness. It's just being aware of how much we're noticing. And then here's the question: what might we do with it, Leslie? What's the evolution of that once we become aware? How do we use that? Where do we go after that?
Yeah, and it's in that awareness component that I think is maybe a lost art, but we're also seekers of, as for you guys, you're truth seekers, and we want to know our impact and why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling, but what is that emotion, and is it mine as it relates to empathy, right? Am I supposed to own it, or is this your yard, or is this my yard? And how do you manage all the things and put it in its place, put it in its rightful place, and allow it to serve you in the moment. And sometimes even in the moment, if we're triggered and we are so encompassed with the emotion, we're not able to be a witness of what's actually happening in order to pull back a little bit to analyze, oh, I probably misspoke, or I probably misbehaved in that situation because I was so in the emotion, and then identified with the emotion rather than just allowing the emotion to come and go.
And one of my favorite quotes is, "We are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions." If we're observers of them, then we can't be them.
That's right.
Yeah, and I see John's been nodding and smiling. John and I just talked about this today, John. So what stuck out to you the most from what Leslie just said?
No, it's truth, right? So we're on this journey of being ourselves, the way I look at it, just to be who our spirit is, our personality, our spark. And sometimes it's easy to be that, depending on who we're around. Sometimes it's not easy, depending on who we're around. And it's this intelligence that I think is available to all of us. Mm-hmm. We just need to learn how to understand it and integrate it so that we can kind of be happy and joyful regardless of what's going on around us, because that's why we want to be here, right? We want to have joy, we want to feel joy, we want to feel love. And if we let everything around us impact that so we don't feel it, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of that it's also nothing, it's all within us. Like we have all of the capabilities, all of the things we desire are in us. And so that the self-awareness component of emotional intelligence allows us to become the to become the owner of our life rather than the victim of our life, because everything that happens around us is for us to identify, ooh, that didn't feel good inside of me right now, but I know it's not the way that you approached it. I just know that it was a trigger. And I think a lot of times, especially in business, with leadership people or anyone that we're coming in contact with, we have these triggers, we have these thoughts, we have these emotions, and all of those things are available for us to go dig deeper into our emotions and identify what needs to come to the surface? What do we need to learn from this? Yeah, it's so intriguing to me, and I just love all the things about emotional intelligence and how beneficial it is to growing us as human citizens and become more responsible, because we've never been given that gift before. I mean, just think what the world is going to be like when we all take responsibility for all the things that we've decided to do in a day, and own that as our own, no matter what the consequence might be. It just really is very exciting to me. I kind of geek out about it. I'm glad you guys do too.
Absolutely. It just, I think what gets me the most excited is where you ended, the prospect of, the three of us get this. I know a lot of our viewers will get this, but like the mass population maybe doesn't get it yet. Or they're discovering it themselves right now. And it's weird, it's different, it's not really taught anywhere. So I'm proud that truth seekers can give some sort of a platform for this discussion to be okay, because I think it's where we're going. I think it's unavoidable. I think a lot of the discomfort comes from the resistance of this conversation itself, and not letting it be okay to talk about. And I think, while you're speaking, Leslie, I was thinking of my journey and how I've gotten to, I feel like I'm pretty in tune with my emotions, and it never ends. There's always more, and I continually catch myself, right? There's always more to go. But I was reflecting on my journey about how I got to where I am today. And you have an interesting story, and I was hoping you might be willing to share that. Well, a couple points in your life to where that became, even if it was important before, more important to you today as you sit here.
Oh, I don't even know which story.
So
there's so many.
The one that you've overcome, just under a year ago, for example.
So this is a really fun story. As one of my objectives for last year was, or my goal was to begin to take myself seriously. And I always take myself seriously. I always am analyzing myself and doing all the things so that I can become more aware. Yet I was hiding behind the business. And so I decided that one of the things that I do is the assessment work that the Man Group does for the Man Group. And I was really learning that it is really hard for people to change if they're not aware. And it's even more hard to begin to regulate yourself. So I started to practice that with myself by taking a class on how to do a podcast. And I started a podcast in September of last year that is demystifying the science of emotional intelligence. And fast forward to, so August it was kicked off, fast forward to September, and I was diagnosed with tongue cancer. So of course you start a podcast and are diagnosed with tongue cancer. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I thought I was in total alignment with who I was. And then I got this word that, oh, and by the way, they're going to have to cut out a percentage of your tongue and you won't be able to talk for however long a period of time, which everybody in my community was very excited about. So I went through that journey. I was able to record all of season 1 before cancer or before surgery. And then I thought that I was going to be able to record the last one at the end of December. My surgery was in November. And I did it. I recorded the last one. It wasn't pretty, but it has propelled me on even greater in depth into this world of emotional intelligence, because when you think about having to relearn how to talk and how to use your tongue and how to swallow, how to spit, you have to have the mindset of a beginner. And it can be so frustrating. So in order to self-regulate, there are just things that I'm not going to be able to do, like eating pasta, for example. I just can't maneuver pasta in my mouth right now. And I get to spend time every day pulling on my tongue, pulling it out, rubbing the scar. And all of those things are things that I could really take the victim mindset. Why did this happen to me? I can't believe I have tongue cancer. I'm never going to be a podcast producer again. My dreams are ruined. And instead, I was like, you know what? This has been a gift. And it's amazing how much you learn when you can't talk for 3 months. And the silence, the discernment that comes from not talking, and the ability to really listen has been such a gift for me in this new journey that I have with this new tongue.
John, what sticks out to you the most?
Yeah, John.
Well, yeah, I can relate, because I had a similar experience a long time ago, in 1984. So I had cancer, where I had a tumor on the base of my tongue, and my whole jaw was wired shut. And I had one of those little pads where it's like a wax thing where you write on it and then you pull it up and you can write again.
Yep.
And that's how I communicated to people while I was in the hospital.
How many months?
I was in the hospital for, I don't know, about 3 weeks.
Wow.
And then I was recovering for a while. I don't remember it because it was 1984. But I had to relearn how to speak, and I still have a few habits from back then, because I had a trach tube, and that was a nightmare having that. So anyhow, I didn't mean to get into that, but I definitely can relate to what your experience is. But the one commonality is, I always told people this: it was the greatest experience that I ever experienced in my life, because I fully felt like I fully surrendered.
Yeah.
And wow, that was a cool experience. And people looked at me like, what are you talking about? How could this be good? But I felt like it was a gift.
Yeah, it's congratulations. That's
You too.
incredible. And I think for all of your listeners who are truth seekers will be I feel like this is what life is about. And the fact that Josh, you found me randomly on LinkedIn, and then Nick just happened not to be in the office, and John is here with us, and we both just happened to have tongue cancer. Like, legit, there aren't that many people in the world that have tongue cancer.
Right.
And I think, to John's point earlier, and how we are all connected, and it's that connectivity that we have lost based on our inability to communicate in a way that doesn't have biases. And that ultimately is emotional intelligence at its finest, when we can own our own viewpoints, be able to put those viewpoints aside, and hear from a place of, I'm going to sit and listen to you with the biggest part of my empathetic being that is available, so that we can have genuine connection. But we're all intertwined already, and it's our resistance to that intertwinedness. I'm not using English correctly, but I'm okay because I had tongue cancer, so I get a pass. At least that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. That is I think the beauty of just human beings. And until we can get to that place, we're always going to have discord. And it's my mission to somehow mend the discord.
Mm. So maybe that might be a great segue, Leslie. You talked about the man group. I would love for you to, share a little bit more about that. Obviously, that's the company, right? So maybe share what your mission is and what you're doing with the man group.
So I'm the woman in the man group. We'll preface it that way. The man group is a consulting firm, and we work with independent retailers, specialty retailers, and leadership teams that supply, so the manufacturers that supply those retailers. So brands that you would probably know that we work with, if you're a runner, it would be Saucony or Ultra, Nike, Adidas. In the bike industry, it's Shimano, Canyon, Trek. And then in the outdoor industry, it's North Face, all the brands. And then we work with the retailers. So people like in your neck of the woods, John, it would be Sun and Ski. I don't know if you're familiar with.
I am. Yeah.
They're one of our clients. So anyway, we work with them primarily with the leadership teams, because a lot of these specialty retailers are entrepreneurs and are mom and pop shops. And a lot of them want to get out of the business, want to get out of the day-to-day, but they don't know how to do that. And so a lot of that is mindset work and just learning new habits and new skill sets to allow your staff that you hired to do the work, and then training the staff on how to do that and the ins and outs of that. And part of my work is the assessment. So teaching leaders the impact their behavior has on their team and how to become more effective. So I started The Other Side of the Man, which is the name of my podcast, in August of last year, in order to just normalize emotional intelligence, normalize how do we do this every day? How do we pay attention to what's happening in our bodies every day and just bring it to the surface, and to create those tangible routines and skill sets that you can have to manage your thoughts. I know we talked about thoughts yesterday, which is also a part of emotional intelligence. What are you saying to yourself on the daily, and writing that small novel every day? And how do you want to change that maybe a little bit? So that's a little bit about the man group and what we do.
Yeah, really appreciate it. I'm wondering, Leslie, as we begin to wrap up here, we always try to grab takeaways at the end of our discussions here. I might ask you a bit of a leading question with what is there any common thread with the people that you coach or the leadership teams that you engage with that is the barrier that they have to overcome? Like, what do you notice? How do you get that breakthrough with them? And is there any common thread across the board with people that you work with?
I think for what I love to see is, and what prevents people from moving forward is a willingness to buy into the fact that I have control over what I do and how I do it. And there are a lot of people who don't buy into that philosophy because it's easier to be a victim than it is to take responsibility for self. So a lot of times we talk about the achiever mindset versus it's not victim mindset, and I'm not able to pull it out of my head right now. But the achiever is your staff that wants to continually improve, is pulling information from you. And the victim mindset is that person that wants to hide behind everything and then fog you. So give you reasons and excuses as to why I can't do that. And so that's really, I think, the hard part, especially for leaders. If you're trying to influence your team to a result that the company needs in order to be successful, then you have to have that buy-in. And how do you know that you have it? And if you don't, then it's really hard for your team to be successful and move forward.
Achiever's mindset. I love that. The opposite of the victim mentality. I'm actually going to take a quick second to give Coach Nick a plug, because if you're a part of our email distribution, part of what goes out every week is he's got a course that you can take that's called Achiever's Mindset. So it's
cool.
very, very ironic that you brought that up, Leslie.
It's from, we use it's called the Jerry Bell book, The Achievers. We get it directly from that. So I'll give Jerry Bell a shout out.
Yeah, nice. And so what might be my takeaway today is building on what you said, because I like to think in terms of yin and yang a lot, and just incorporating what you just said with what Jon said earlier about surrender. So like taking control is the opposite of the victim mentality, but there's this balance between controlling what you can't control and then just total surrender to what the universe gives you. And it's knowing when you can push and pull those strings and when you're just a part of something greater that you're just a part of. There's nothing, stress comes from resistance a lot of times. And if we have it in our minds that we should be something, identity comes into play in this conversation, then if we don't associate ourselves with that version of ourselves, then we resist it. And there's the play between owning total ownership of our feelings and our emotions, yes, but also like what's being asked of us, what are we being drawn to that we can just totally not resist and just be in alignment with what's being asked of us.
Love that. I love that word surrender. Thank you, Jon, for that.
Yeah. So maybe I stole Coach Jon's takeaway today, but we'll put him on the spot. Coach, some sort of takeaway from today's conversation.
My takeaway is the miracle of how we just happen to show up and have this common experience.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's pretty magical, and I think that's worth celebrating.
I've never been more humbled in my life. And so it's an honor to be in your presence, knowing what you went through and what you endured, and your ability to call out the word surrender that will be probably this whole thing has infinitely changed my life for the best. So thank you guys for finding
you
and having me on this platform. And Nick, thank you for being absent today.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Yes, thank you, Nick. And I'm humbled and honored to just be a part of bringing the two of you together. So thank you very much. Jon, thank you for joining us. And Leslie, thank you for being on.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.